Go on, get out. Last words are for fools who have not yet said enough.
Very few people have had the immense impact on history that Karl Marx has had. Now, you may stop me here because you think of Karl Marx only as the inventor of communism. But what if I told you that Karl Marx didn't really invent communism as we know it today, and he was actually the father of modern economics and cultural theory? Karl Marx was a complicated man with a complicated history, and one glorious beard. Karl Heinrich Marx was born on the 5th of May in 1818 in Trier, Germany. He was the son of a successful Jewish lawyer and became a lawyer himself in his younger years. He studied at one of the top universities in Germany, and at university he would become introduced to the ideas of two other men that would shape much of what he would do later in life: Hegel and Feuerbach, philosophers that would shape Marx's thinking. Armed with his newfound knowledge, Marx would start to form many of his own ideas on humanity and economics. Following his time at university, he would be introduced to a lifelong friend and writing partner, Friedrich Engels. Engels and Marx met in Cologne, Germany in November of 1842, but would not become friends on first meeting. In fact, it was nearly 2 full years later when they would meet again in Paris in August of 1844. It was at this meeting that they would form their partnership. Marx believed that the capitalist ideas that governed society were deeply flawed and desired a new, alternative system. Here would come the birth of an idea known as communism.
What's that you're reading?
Karl Marx?
Surely you're not a communist.
Do I have to be a communist to read Karl Marx?
Rupert. That's a valid answer. Well, if you're not a communist, what are you?
Nothing.
Nothing?
I dislike all forms of government.
But somebody must rule.
And I don't like the word rule.
Well, if we don't like the word rule, let's call it leadership.
Leadership in government is political power, and political power is an official form of antagonizing the people.
What magazine did you say he edits?
A commentary on current events.
But Marx and Engels did not really know what communism would look like. They certainly didn't think it would resemble what we think of it as today, and perhaps more to the point, they simply wanted a society where people worked for the good of each other instead of the good of themselves. A crazy idea, right? But that's what communism was to Marx. It was not what we think of it as today.
Marxism was associated with the Soviet Union and Maoist China and other so-called communist systems. But, Marx would have turned over in his grave to see what they were doing. They were radically anti-Marxist, radically. But as long, like take, say, the way the Bolsheviks, Lenin and Trotsky, decided they had to drive the backward peasantry to industrialization by force in order to lead ultimately to a socialist society. In the last 20 or 30 years of his life, Marx was working on peasant society in Russia, and Marx was just poring over the data, and he became convinced that there's real revolutionary potential in peasant society. Peasant communes, peasant cooperative tradition, and so on. The urban socialists, both the Bolsheviks and the Social Democrats, literally suppressed all that work. It was just too inconsistent with their own class interests of controlling social movements. So that was gone. And the same is true across the board. I mean, I'm not, again, kind of like Adam Smith. You can't worship Marx, but he had things to say. And what he had to say, what he believed, was utterly inconsistent with what are called the communist socialist movements.
Marx's work to understand what drives the human condition made him the father of several different fields of study. He worked on understanding economics in a way that made sense, but his work also makes him the father of modern cultural theory. Marx fully recognized that the masses will follow anything with mass appeal, the driving principle behind popular culture.
When I was young, there were two heads who helped me structure my mind. Baldwin, which I read when I was 18, and Marx, on which I started working at university in an academic surrounding, and I did 4 years on the Capitol. And in terms, I was an economist, so it was the central point of all my studies, and it told me a lot about this particular society, how it functioned, a society that have profit at its center. Any decision in the industry or elsewhere, in the news, elsewhere, is based on profit, which is the worst way to take decision. When you know what Marx did is to analyze the way that economy functioned, and he demonstrated how you are bound to go to crisis after crisis. It's the best way to understand what is happening today in a world where it's more and more difficult for young people to understand this machine.
And now that we've discussed the hard stuff, let's turn our focus to Marx's beard, because it was a sight to behold. Marx's beard, photographed many times in his life, was long, extending several inches from his face, white, and generally well-groomed. He was a man of culture, and the beard mirrored that. He was also wise, often able to predict trends in culture and economics generations before they happened. His beard was a perfect reflection of who he was and his incredible impact on future generations. Karl Marx was a man of wisdom and honor. He died on March 14, 1883, so we honor him today. His importance to history is beyond comparison, and he was a man of the people, by the people, and for the people. He was the father of modern economics, modern cultural theory, and the father of a truly glorious beard.